listeners, I'm Tiana Bielec, and I'm here with Professor Manlio Graziano, who is specialized in geopolitics. We will talk about the ongoing Israelo-Palestinian conflict from a broader scientific point of view. Professor Graziano teaches geopolitics and the politics of the religion at Sciences Po Paris, at La Sorbonne, at Geneva Institute of Geopolitics. His international experience includes teaching on different institutions around the world, such as in New York, Glasgow, Warsaw, Rome, Milan, Stockholm, Istanbul, and many other cities. He's author of 4 books and numerous articles, and Professor Graziano is also one of the founders of Nicholas Spickman International Center for Geopolitical Analysis. Spickman Center was created in 2022. It's a non-profit, non-political, international organization dedicated to study of geopolitics. It unites both students and young professionals in order to learn and produce geopolitical analysis. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
I will start with the questions. I believe all of our viewers want to know more about the context of this conflict. So we will provide here, first of all, the wider context of this conflict. Can you start with deconstructing some of the flash phrases and, so to say, commonplaces that we hear in current public discourse or already for decades in public discourse when we talk about Israelo-Palestinian conflict?
Oh, thank you for this question, because actually there are many common places, as you said, about this conflict, about the situation over there. I would try to be very rapid in making quite a list. The first one is, for example, the idea that Arabs and Muslims in general and Jews are hostile to each other. This is something that probably reflects much more the situation of today than the historical relation between Arabs and Muslims in general and Jews. I would dare to say that before 1918, there was no hostility between Arabs and Jews in Palestine. On the contrary, when Jews were attacked in Europe, Muslims tended to sympathize with Jews, and they considered them their cousin, following the genealogy of the Bible, and they shared this sacred text together. In the course of history, both Muslims and especially Jews had a huge problem with Christians, not with each other. So the situation we have today is a situation, historically speaking, pretty recent. And so it's not something that has roots in religion or in past rivalries. This is the first thing. The second thing that everybody believe, because it's something that is repeated very often, is the fact that the United States is always been the protector of Israel, and Russia always been the protector of the Arab people and Palestinians in particular. That's not true. Israel was founded in 1948, and the country that pushed more for the foundation of Israel was the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was followed by the United States because they had this common interest in expelling the colonial powers, in this case Britain, from Palestine, but the colonial power everywhere from the colonies, because they wanted to be able to intervene in these territories without having to deal with the colonial powers. So the Soviet Union and the United States pushed for the creation of Israel. In 1956, we have again the United States and the Soviet Union on the same side, but against Israel, because Israel helped British and French to attack Egypt in the Suez Crisis, and the United States, especially the United States, and the Soviet Union were on the side of Egypt against the British, French, and Israel. So we can say that the situation we know today started, if you want, in a clear way after the war in 1967, the Six-Day War. But before this, this situation was not that clear. Probably for the United States, it was not clear to support Israel. The Soviet Union already decided to support Arabs against Israel. You know that the Soviet Union changed very often position.
That is actually tackling to what was about to be my next question. You mentioned that one specific date. Can we also talk about a deeper origin of this conflict?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I mentioned 1918 because 1918 is the moment when the British arrived in Palestine, occupied Jerusalem, and established their mandate on the Palestine and Jordan. And they applied exactly the same mechanism any colonial power applied everywhere in the world, which consists of dividing the peoples to rule the people. So they did everywhere when they had the possibility of putting people together. For example, in India, they were able to put Muslims against the Hindu, and they did it systematically. In Palestine, it was much more difficult because the population was pretty homogeneous. So during the war, they invited the Jews to establish themselves in Palestine. And when there was a conspicuous minority of Jews, they pushed the extreme ale of Arabs to take the position of responsibility in Palestine. Arabs were divided in, let's say, rapidly in two parts. One was favorable to the presence of Jews because Jews arrived there, cultivated the lands, and they shared the result of their new wealth brought by Jews in Palestine. And the other faction was hostile, but decidedly hostile. And British promoted, for example, the election of the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, and they chose a personality who was not just hostile, but it was condemned by British themselves for conducting a first pogrom in Palestine against Jews. So they decided to put the two peoples against each other. So the situation started becoming very difficult to manage. And of course, they choose to push the more extreme wings in two parts in order to make this conflict harsher. So from this moment on, the situation went worse and worse, especially after the Great Arab Revolt from 1936, 1939, when the British decided at the end to stop the immigration of Jews in Palestine. And it was 1939, and everybody can understand that it was the moment when Jews needed to have a safe harbor. So that's the very beginning. And so we can say that origin of this conflict between Jews and Arabs lie in this specific and voluntary decision of the British to put them against each other.
Thank you for explaining that and for elaborating the details that were before. You already mentioned some of the international factors, and we see that the dynamics of different powers having different interests. Can we bring it to this moment and maybe cover a bit more of the international players and what are their ultimate goals in this situation?
Yes, I would start from the United States and China today, because of course they are the most important actors. The day when we record this conversation is the day when Joe Biden and Xi Jinping met in Los Angeles. I would say that they don't have specific goals, because they were caught by surprise by this war, and they are both hostile to this war, because this is something that creates problems for both the countries. So in a sense, they have a common goal, which is to try to calm down the situation. Of course, they are not there physically, even though the United States moved some war ship in the area, but I'm sure that the United States tries to rein in a sort of way the movement of Israel, and China can do the same thing with Iran, which is of course the mastermind of the entire situation, not because they organized the attack of the October 7th, but because they are behind the Hamas. So this is for China and the United States. For Russia, of course, is more than happy about what is going on, because the international attention was diverted from the conflict in Ukraine, and so Russians feel much freer to do what they want to do, what they wanted to achieve, and nobody is looking at them. There was a I saw yesterday someone who told that in New York City there was a huge sign, support Ukraine, and they removed Ukraine and put Israel at the place. So it's a sign of, and for Putin is a very good thing. Then we have local actors, and just to be short, Saudi Arabia is not happy about what is going on, for sure, because they were close to finalize this agreement with Israel, and this operation, one of the most direct objective and purposes of this the October 7 attacks was to disrupt this agreement, and it worked, even though I'm persuaded that it worked just for a while, because Saudi Arabia and Israel have been collaborating for years now. It's not something new, and they will finalize this agreement one day or another. Not today, of course, but another day. Turkey, I would say it is destabilized, because Turkey was pushing toward a clear and heavy rapprochement with Israel, and this is something that, of course, is suspended now. So they have, like Saudi Arabia, like the other Muslim and Arab actors, they have a problem with their population, because the population over there is supporting Palestinians, and many of them supporting Hamas directly. Iran is the winner. Of course, Iran wanted to disrupt this agreement, and it succeeded, even if, as I said, momentarily. And because it can promote itself like the defender of the Palestinian cause, and probably can present itself like the only remaining defender of Palestine. So for them is a victory, but I think that it's a momentary, temporary victory. It doesn't last, and I think in any case Iran is too weak to do anything else, so it stops here.
Thank you for that explanation. And my last question would be, how will this situation that is really observed from all over the world, how will that affect further international relations? And what are the potential scenarios that you can see as following this conflict?
As I said, if China and the United States are aiming to the same result, which is to appease the situation, I think that it's usually the war is presented like something that destabilizes even more the international relations, but it could be the other way around, in the sense that it could even accelerate a kind of rapprochement between China and the United States. Again, it would be momentary. It's not, because the divergences between the two are much more profound and structural. But in any case, they are establishing a dialogue. And I think, of course, the meeting Biden and Xi have today was organized before the war, so it's not something that it's consequence, but the climate of the meeting was pretty positive, as I heard from the first impression. And I think that this war is playing a role in pushing them together. So I don't think that it's something that can extend out of this conflict. Also because Iran, as I said, is not interested in enlarging the conflict, and it was clear from the beginning, because Iran is too weak to support and to resist to a war, and the purpose of the ruling class in Iran is just to stay in power. And of course, if there is a war, they will lose power, so they don't want. And we can see it from the position of Hezbollah, because Hezbollah says and does only what Tehran tells them to do and say. So of course they are using bombastic slogans, but this is what they are supposed to do. But even from the military point of view, they have some disturbed actions, but not a full-scale participation in this conflict. On the contrary, so I think that about the evolution you asked me, I think that everything lies in what Israel wants to do in the next days and the next weeks, because of course the systematic and indiscriminate bombing of Gaza is not something that increases the sympathy for Israel in the world. On the contrary. And I think that after 50 days after October the 7th, Israelis start understanding that it's not a good politics, and it's not a good policy to keep going this way. And actually, you know, that they started bringing journalists on the front in Gaza to show them that they are just fighting against the Hamas. But I think that sooner or later, maybe more soon than late, they will slow down this operation, because it's not very instrumental to promote the credibility of Israel. And I'm talking about Israel. Israel is not that important in international relations, but the fact that the United States is supporting so firmly Israel can be a problem, because of course, if Israel loses credibility and sympathy in the world, automatically the United States is losing sympathy and credibility. So this is something that, of course, worries a lot Americans, but they need to hope that Israel is able to slow down these operations and find a goal, because so far Israel has no goals. The goal they proclaim to destroy Hamas, it's not credible, because they cannot destroy Hamas, and they know it. I hope they know it.
Thank you for clarifying many of these details. I think it's very important in this moment to have more profound view on the entire situation, more than what we can see in the news. I want to thank you for all this effort and for giving us some of the historical facts, but also the context. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for your time. And we promise to come back with a different video very soon.